Since well before Victor Hugo looked up at Notre Dame and thought, what if a hunchback lived in there? Authors have been inspired by Paris. Welcome to the Storytime in Paris podcast on Paris Underground Radio, where we keep that tradition alive by showcasing an author with a French connection in each episode. Every episode will feature 5 questions asked by you, our author's biggest fans, and answered live on air. Then, our authors will treat us to a reading of an excerpt from their book. Who knows? Maybe you'll even be inspired to write your own great French novel. I'm your host, Jennifer Garrity. In our very first episode, I sit down with author April Lily Heise. Lily is a travel writer and a tour guide. She runs the award-winning blog Je t'aime me neither. She hosts the Romancing in Paris and Paris Cachet podcasts on this network. She has written 3 books, including her latest, There's Only One Paris, Tales from Our Times. Lily is also one of my closest friends, which is why I'm thrilled to have her on our very first episode. Lily is adventurous, outgoing, and eminently creative. She turned months of lockdown during a global pandemic into an emotional and heartwarming collection of short stories. I can always count on her for a new perspective, an uplifting word, and a glass of wine. Without further ado, here is April Lily Heise, author of There's Only One Paris, Tales from Our Times. Hello, Lily. Thank you for being my very first guest on the Storytime podcast.
Oh, I'm very honored to be here. Thanks for the invitation, Jennifer.
You are so welcome. I could not be more proud of you for having sat down and written a book during a global pandemic.
Well, so people reacted to the pandemic in so many different ways. And I was just like, I have to keep busy or I'm going to go crazy. So there you go.
I had a similar reaction in keeping busy, but the amount of concentration that it takes to write a book, that's impressive.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Before I get too far ahead of myself, can you tell our listeners a little bit about you and your book?
Sure. Well, I've been living in Paris for over 20 years. It's crazy how time flies. I came as a student and really fell in love with Paris. And I've been writing for a little over 10 years. And I've published 3 books altogether, 2 in a series that could have been carried on. Je t'aime me neither and Je t'aime maybe, about the unexpected adventures one has on the quest for finding romance in Paris. So they're funny pieces that are a little bit different from the regular, what you might expect, kind of romantic Paris book. And then I wrote a book, like you said, last year, sparked from the pandemic. And it's called There's Only One Paris, Tales from Our Times. And it was published at the very end of October. And it came out of a project of participatory stories I was writing with the followers of my Facebook page. I do have a blog called Je t'aime me neither, and my website has all kinds of ideas on romantic, offbeat things to do in Paris and around the world. But my Facebook followers were missing Paris so much, knowing that they wouldn't be able to be coming because of the pandemic. And so I started writing stories with them. And so I asked them for their favorite places in Paris, and they gave me a list. And so every week I selected one, and I realized that there could be one story per arrondissement. And so this is kind of within steering the direction, but they're fiction stories, but kind of sparked by ideas I had that week. And often, let's say I would ask, what's your favorite thing about the River Seine? And so they would tell me, and I would list little ideas, quotes in the book. Maybe a character was speaking, and it was actually something one of the followers said. And one story is based on an actual true story, and one is inspired by one of the biggest participants in the project. And so from there, I edited it with a wonderful editor friend of mine in the States. And so that was this whole other step on fine-tuning it and creating this cohesive narrative. There's also a story that connects all the other stories cities. And so this kind of adventure that goes throughout the book. So it's a fun book, perfect for people who love Paris or even residents, because it's not, in my opinion, too cliche. It's really about current Paris during the pandemic and just at our current time and how the city is changing and evolving.
Did you write one story a week?
Yes.
How did you do that?
Yes. Well, like you said, it was about keeping busy. And so so I wrote one story per week for 10 weeks. So that was during the lockdown in Paris, and then for a couple of weeks after to come up to 10 at that time. And so I really had a goal of having it ready for Sunday, because I was reading them out live on YouTube for the followers. And so they would know the story. And then I published them on my site as well. And then those were the edited stories afterwards. So after the 10 weeks, I wrote another 10 stories, but I did take a few weeks off.
I think that's reasonable. So I compiled some questions from your fans and your followers.
Wonderful.
When was the first time that you remember thinking that you wanted to be a writer?
Well, it's interesting what inspires or triggers these kinds of creative desires in people. And so I grew up in the countryside in Canada on an old farm. And so I used to spend a lot of time wandering the fields and forests by myself or with my siblings. And this is where often I'd be riding my bike and I would just be thinking about adventures and different places. And I do have a bit of an overactive imagination. And I was quite fortunate at my school. They had a book project. And so every year the students would create a book and bind it and everything. Like, when you're 9, it's simplified books, but I always really enjoyed doing that. And when I was 11, I was in grade 6, I even won a short story contest. And the story was about an alien that I named after my sister. But what's fascinating is then at the time I was in a special class, a French immersion class. So it's like French school within a regular school, like one solid French class. You do all your classes in French except for English class. And my English grammar got very poor because of this. And so in high school, I never thought afterwards to perhaps go study English or literature because my grammar was so horrible. And now it's quite ironic. One of my earlier jobs in Paris was as an English teacher. And so then my grammar got good. So I was forced to relearn it, you could say. And so that's probably why I took a different path in university, but then returned to writing. I started by writing travel articles. I'm a travel writer as well. And so it was via the travel writing that I started writing more and wrote my first book. I think I must have started my first book it was published in 2013. So I think I started around 3 years before that. So a little over 10 years ago now.
That's crazy. Oh, well, that leads into the next question, which is, what are some of the biggest differences that you see? Like in terms of what is the best and the worst difference between France and Canada?
Well, I always think that there are good attributes to everywhere, and both countries have many, but it's true they also have some downsides. And so the biggest difference kind of in the direction of Canada is life is easy. Here in France, it's quite a challenge to do many things, and not just as foreigners. We do have a few added challenges ourselves, like with you, like me. We're not, I'm a French citizen now, but for many years I'd have to go to the prefecture, the kind of local administration office to get my residence permit. And there was always, they always love for you to have missing documents and then they make you come back and things like that. And the French have this expression, c'est pas possible. Instead of it's impossible, it is not possible. Even other things, it can be a bit challenging. But, I guess that's part of what makes you a little more creative in life here too. But in Canada, yeah, things are very easy. People are very friendly, and it's just kind of an easy life. But on the other hand, life in Paris is perhaps more exciting. And I came here, I did end up studying art at university instead of, like I said before, literature or writing, something like that, because I'm very interested in art and culture. And Paris for me is probably the top art city in the world. And so from museums to art galleries to street art, and it has a lot of other cultural activities. So that is what I find Canada's lacking a little bit. There is something of an art scene, and there are some museums, but the options are quite smaller. And then I also love the fact that people here have a joie de vivre. That doesn't mean they're happy. There's a difference. That means, I think for me, that they enjoy life, and people here really live. And so that's why you find people in cafe terraces and just kind of out enjoying. This is something that I find Canada a little bit like kind of North American mentality, work, 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 and and people keep busy and don't necessarily take the time just to live. And so that's one thing I do like over here as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's like a respect, or I don't know, there's like an honor or something for just being able to hang out and enjoy a glass of wine on a sunny day with your friends.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to doing that again soon with you.
Me too. As soon as they let us out there.
Yes.
I'll meet you anywhere. We'll be right back with Storytime in Paris after a word from our sponsors.
What bra are you wearing right now? Whether you're smiling from ear to ear because you love your bra, or whether you winced because you're wearing, yet again, something you'd rather not, tune into Paris Undressed, the podcast that goes behind the seams of the lingerie capital of the world. Hi, I'm Kate Kemp Griffin, author and host of Paris Undressed. From boudoir to the street, we'll explore the art of making and wearing French lingerie. We'll meet the designers and brands shaping our bodies and talk to fascinating people about femininity, sensuality, and sexuality. We'll share bra stories, secrets, desires, hopes, and dreams. This is the ultimate special occasion. So put on your favorite bra and tune into Paris Undressed, Tuesdays on Paris Underground Radio.
Hey, I'm Emily.
And I'm Caroline.
And we live in France, where pretty much every meal demands both a cheese course and a wine pairing.
Amen.
It doesn't need to be a special occasion for you to add this French flair to your daily meals, and we want to help you with that.
That's the thing. A great cheese and a delicious glass of wine can really elevate your at-home dining. However, even if it's a Tuesday night and you're by yourself.
Tuesday night by yourself is the perfect time.
Absolutely.
So get involved. Send us your favorite home meals. Describe the recipe. Let us know what it's all about. And we will put our palates and minds to the test. I'm going to pair it with the most complimentary cheese.
And I am going to figure out a perfect wine pairing.
Tune in on Fridays to hear some of our favorite pairings and to discover some brand new recipes that you can try at home.
Join our guests as we explore how to elevate your home-cooked food.
Can't wait to share these with you. Bon appetit!
And now, back to Storytime in Paris. In the writing of this book, which arrondissement or which district did you find the most inspiring, or which place in the arrondissements, and why?
Oh, that's a very good question. Each of the stories is very different. And so I really tried, I picked the places based on, I tried to pick some famous places and some lesser known places. And I really tried to pick a place that's linked to the feeling, the history of each arrondissement. Sometimes a little less so, but, I did my best to do that. And I love a lot of the stories. Oh, geez, this is a hard question, but I think I'm going to pick the one in the 17th. It's called The Ghosts of the Cité des Fleurs, and it's it's a special street, and I think it's a very magical place. It is a villa street. These are these streets in Paris that are quite narrow, cobblestone usually, and have small houses on them. And this street has some lovely houses that I think each has a story to tell. And this is what comes across in the story. We might meet some ghosts. The little girl in the story has quite an overactive imagination, and there's some fun twists and turns to the story. And I don't know, for me, I just really felt there. Some of the stories take place over, like, let's say a few days, or they go back and forth in time. But this one, it does a little bit, but it's pretty much in this moment. And I really felt like I was in that moment, in that story. So I have to say, and so the 17th arrondissement, the Cité des Fleurs, and the story, The Ghosts of the Cité des Fleurs.
I know we were in lockdown while you were writing most of this, but did you get to go to the places as you were writing about them?
Well, here's the thing. Sometimes I couldn't, because those first 10 stories, I did Montmartre, but I was walking around Montmartre in my 1 kilometer radius of, kind of hour-long exercise we were doing. I had plenty of inspiration for that. Most of them I could not. And so I forgot to mention earlier, I'm also a tour guide. And so I know a lot about the history of Paris, and I have a very good memory. But a few times I had to look up pictures of the place and be like, I think that this is, and this is the first story on the Eiffel Tower. This poor woman gets lost trying to find this very specific view that she was obsessed with taking a picture of, and she's wandering the streets of the 15th, and I was very far away, definitely further than 1 kilometer. And so I was looking on Google Maps which way she could be going. So, and then even did Street View to be like, okay, yeah, you can't see the Eiffel Tower from that street. So technology did help in the writing of the book.
Did you find that this lockdown changed the style of your writing in any way?
Yes. And I should say my other 2 books are inspired by my real life quest of trying to find romance in Paris. And they're all true stories. It's a novel. It's written as a cohesive, beginning, middle, and end. But they are based on reality. And this was quite interesting and lots of fun to write complete fiction. Like I said, 2 stories were inspired by reality, but there was a lot of construction of the whole story for those as well. But I really enjoyed developing the characters. And that's why there are probably 50 characters in the book around that anyway. And so in each one I was hoping different. And, I tried to also imagine and empathize with what would this person have been feeling and going through, because the pandemic's let's say it's a backseat, topic. It's more on what the pandemic had pushed and incited people to then change their lives or think about things differently, and give people hope, maybe change their perspectives or views on life. I was kind of constructing these characters, but then seeing the situation through the pandemic. And so that was, creating these characters, I think, was my favorite part.
My last question for you, was there something that surprised you in the writing of this book? Did you learn something about yourself or about Paris or about, something that you didn't know beforehand?
Ooh, that's another very good question. One of the best things that came about this book is the connections I made to people around the world. We're talking from Australia to Colorado. So the way that it brought Paris to life for people. So that for me, kind of the more technical side was really great. And a lot of people were totally gung-ho and involved, and it meant a lot to them. And that meant therefore a lot to me. But of the things I learned in the book that was maybe more surprising, I think, there are a couple, so I need to narrow it down. I really I think about learning about the history of the Parc Monceau And that's a nice story. This story could be a movie. A couple, I think, could be nice movies. Oh, I'm going to cheat and I'm going to give you 2 examples. So the Parc Monceau story is very nice. This Argentinian woman inherits a fancy apartment overlooking the Parc Monceau, one of these palaces that are over there. And so she's learning about her family history. And then we also learn about the history of the area and the park too, which is a nice park. It's not on everyone's radar, but I find it's one of the prettiest, and it's the oldest city park. Well, as a park. Then the other thing I'm going to cheat and include is something that comes throughout the book, is learning about the Commune of Paris. And so the Commune is a rebellion that took place, kind of a civil war that took place in Paris in 1871 after the fall of Napoleon III during the Franco-Prussian War. And there was a 4-month rebellion. This year, right now, they're celebrating the 150th anniversary of this, but it came up throughout the stories because I would find these links. I'm like, oh, there's a link to the Paris Commune here, whether it be from the catacombs, finding posters there, to Belleville and the kind of communard spirit that was over there. I think for me as a discovery, that was really nice and made me want to learn more.
I love the idea, too, that you said that, we think of writing as the solitary thing that we do. We sit alone in our rooms and we write and write and write and write. And the fact that you use your writing to connect to other people, especially in a time where, we were stuck alone by ourselves. I think that's a really interesting choice that you made. I think it's really kind of fascinating that you were able to take this thing that's normally alone and make it such an interactive networking kind of thing. That's fabulous.
Yeah, thanks. And, it was great. And I might write another one too, and then maybe come up with a theme, like instead of course, the pandemic, maybe it doesn't have to visit all the arrondissements. Maybe instead we're going to do a foodie one. And so the stories take place in a market or a restaurant and, ice cream parlor. I don't know, just there are tons of opportunities and ideas out there. But again, for it to be participatory so that people can contribute and then hopefully go buy the book after.
I love that. Well, on that note, where can we buy the book?
So if you're based in Paris, I do like supporting independent bookstores. And so you can buy it at a left bank bookstore called the Red Wheelbarrow. It's right across, it's on Rue de Médicis, and it's right across from the Luxembourg Gardens. So you can take the book and go read in the Luxembourg Gardens afterwards. Or you can buy it online. And it is on Amazon. And if you go to my website, jetemmeneither.com, I do have a link where you can buy it at a discount for the ebook, and then it avoids Amazon. So if you do like ebooks, there is a way to get it for cheaper. And just the ebook though. And then it is also available in audio format, either on Audible, or I also have another link where you can get it at a better price. So you'll see information about that on my site.
And we'll include it in the description for this show as well, so people can follow the links just through here. We'll be right back with Storytime in Paris after a word from our sponsors. When former college roommates Joanne and Britt join up for a hike in the Colorado Rockies on Joanne's 25th birthday, they're prepared for a light, fun, 4-hour walk culminating in delicious birthday barbecue.
You ready? Britt, are you putting on lipstick?
So what?
So we're about to go on a 4-hour hike up the Rockies.
So? Mother Nature will appreciate the effort. But when they decide to follow a mysterious arrow in the woods, things take a turn for the bizarre. Hey, wait, this rock has an arrow painted on it. Was that yours?
I don't remember an arrow.
Should we follow it? Maybe it's a sign.
We don't want to get lost, though. There's only this one trail.
Well, let's just take a little peek. What could possibly go wrong? With not much more than lipstick, dental floss, and their own senses of humor to get them through, will they survive against Mother Nature, unexplained occurrences, and an abandoned town that may not be abandoned after all? Babes in the Woods, an original comedic mystery series. Wednesdays on Paris Underground Radio.
Welcome to Paris Underground Radio's The Heart of You. My name is Annette Deleu. This is a podcast about soul exploration, finding out what your true purpose is in this lifetime through various modalities such as grounding and energy clearing, divination, and exploring your past lives. Over the next 20 episodes, I will also be interviewing experts in the fields of astrology, mediumship, as well as numerology. Join us every Thursday for a brand new episode. Go to parisundergroundradio.com for more information. And don't forget to follow us on social media at Paris Underground Radio on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I look forward to walking this journey with you.
And now, back to Storytime in Paris. So we're going to listen to a reading of one of your chapters. Is there anything that we should know about this chapter before we dig in?
Yeah, so the chapter is called Picnics and Surprises on the Seine. And this was interesting because this is a story that did have a lot of feedback from the followers of the project on Facebook. And I inserted a lot of their ideas. And it's quite a nice chapter because it's a bit of a tour of the history of Paris and its monuments, because there are a lot of interesting sites along the Seine. And it has a little bit of romance too. And I think it also includes some of my favorite things to do in Paris, and that is walk along the Seine and picnics. So it starts off with a picnic and a few other things, some surprises happen. And these are all kind of, it's a very real story too. It's a very local story. And that's why I think it was a good choice of yours, because it does have a nice window into kind of the local life in Paris and the things Parisians like to do. She gazed out at the river. The sun was still in the sky, and a golden shimmer sparkled across the Seine's surface. It was sometimes hard being the only single in her group of happily coupled-up friends. They'd all seemed to have met their âme sœur, their soulmates, and she was left with the castaways. The dancers sitting in the chairs in the corner that nobody else wanted to dance with, who, in turn, didn't want to dance with her. The river's waltzing waves didn't seem to have any answers for her. "Sorry, gals, I gotta call it an early night," Amelia announced, suddenly hopping up from the blanket. "I've got a lot to do tomorrow." Before her friends could object, Amelia blew them all kisses, scooped up her bag, and put on a protective face mask. "I'll be fine," she called over her shoulder as she headed east on the riverbank. She would walk to the Austerlitz station to catch Metro Line 5. This would connect her to Line 1 at Bastille, which would take her to Concord Station and back home in the austere 8th District. By now, more people had gathered along the riverbank. Amelia's eyes wandered over the festive crowd. Small groups of people enjoying the soft, late summer air, bottles of wine, and each other's company. Unfortunately, her eyes also fell on several affectionate couples. Oh, where would she find a new and better Jules? She crossed under the Pont de la Tournelle and looked up at the statue of Saint Genevieve, one of the patron saints of Paris. The young nun is said to have saved the city from Attila and the Huns back in 451 AD. "Come on, Genevieve, can't you do something for me?" As hard as Amelia stared at the statue, it seemed doubtful the spirit of the saint could save her from the barbarians of today's dating world. Soon after the bridge, the riverbank became the Tino Rossi Park. The south part of this had small plots of flowers, bushes, weeping willows, and some outdoor sculptures, whereas the stretch along the Seine had several rounded alcoves. These half-moon areas were bordered by a few tall steps which descended to the river's edge. These amphitheaters were often used for open-air dancing, and one of them was currently filled with a dozen or so couples dancing salsa. Maybe I really should take up Pearl's offer to join them at the dancing club, Amelia considered as she approached the dancers. Just then, her foot kicked a small object and sent it flying towards them. However, it didn't make it all the way to the dance floor because it hit someone sitting on the steps first. Oh no, thought Amelia, mortified. What should she do? Turn and scurry the other way? Pretend she didn't know what had happened? The victim flinched. He reached down to pick up the projectile and turned around. There was no way she could hide now. A slender man with dark short hair stood up and looked at her. He raised his hand. Between his index finger and thumb was a wine cork.
Thank you so much, Lily. It's been a real pleasure having you here.
I appreciate the invitation. It's been great to connect with you and to your listeners.
My guest today was April Lily Heise. A huge thank you to her for being our guinea pig. You can find links to her book, ebook, and audiobook, There's Only One Paris, Tales from Our Times, as well as her other books, on her website, jetemmeneither.com, or if you're in Paris, you can find print copies at the Red Wheelbarrow. I'm your host, Jennifer Garrity, and you can find me on all socials at Jennyphoria, JennyPhoria, and on my website, jennyphoria.com. Storytime in Paris was produced by me at Paris Underground Radio. For more information on this show and shows like it, please go to parisundergroundradio.com. Thank you for listening.